find us. Getting started right on the hour, 8 o'clock here today. No music this week. Didn't have time to bring it up. Got a lot to talk about tonight. I am going to try and keep us to half an hour. I know that you don't all have all night to hang out here. Let's see if we've got anybody tuned in yet. Oh, we do. 3 people already. Very good. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started tonight. Let's open with a word of prayer, shall we? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For you alone are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So, folks, the first thing we're going to do tonight is talk about the scriptures that I'm going to be using on Sunday for our sermon. We got good evening, Lucy. Good, and Eddie, too, I'm sure. First thing we're going to do is look at the scriptures that we're going to be using this week in church. And we're continuing on in our series on the Apostle Paul. And last week we got into some of his writings, but this week we're looking exclusively at Acts because there's an important episode in Acts that I want to talk about. This is when Paul went to Athens. And here's the story. We are in Acts chapter 17, verses 16 through 34. And I'm reading from the New International Version this week. So while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting in the Areopagus, where they said to him, May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting. You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean." All the Athenians and the foreigners who live there spent their time doing nothing but talking about listening to the latest ideas. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, "We want to hear you again on this subject." At that, Paul left the council. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. Among them was Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And folks, there is so much we could talk about in this, and I have only just begun to scratch the surface in my studies this week. No matter how long you study the scriptures, you continue to find things that either you didn't know before or things that challenge what you knew before. I had always understood this occasion that Paul spoke at the Areopagus as being a polite invitation to debate, because the people in Athens were an academic bunch. It was a cosmopolitan city. They had a university. They had competing schools of philosophy there. That this was, a polite invitation to come and make your case. Reading Tom Wright today, Tom does not think that this was a polite invitation, that this was more of a summons to appear before the court, which does make sense. The more I read about what the Areopagus was, it was a type of a court. So it could be, in fact, that Paul was being charged with preaching foreign ideas. And it says here that they thought he was preaching foreign gods, and it's sort of lost in English here. What he was talking about, it says they thought he was talking about foreign gods because he was talking about Jesus and the resurrection. But the word for resurrection is a female noun that could be interpreted to be a proper name. So they thought that Jesus and Anastasis were this male god and his consort that he was preaching. I don't know that I'm going to go into that on Sunday. That's a little complicated. It is interesting to me, though, that he was arguing with Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. I know a lot about Stoic philosophy. I practice a Christian form of Stoicism myself. And the Stoics and the Epicureans were at opposite ends of the philosophic spectrum in those days. And the Epicureans believed that, well, first let me say that, we know about the Roman gods from Roman mythology. And in the days of the first century, all of their temples still existed, but the educated folk did not take the Roman mythological gods seriously. They thought that if anything, they were all just different ways of understanding the one God. They were not really polytheists at that time. The uneducated folk had more of a superstitious view of the gods, so you would offer offerings on all of the different altars just to cover all of your bases, which is why there's one there called the altar to the unknown God. We know about all these different gods, but just in case there's one that we don't know about, we'll make an offering over here as well. But the educated folks of the day weren't buying into all of that anymore. So the Epicureans believed that if gods existed, that they were so far away from here and so disinterested in us, we have no way of knowing what they're up to anyway. They don't seem to have any effect on us. So the best we can do is try to be happy. And for the Epicureans to be happy, the best way to be happy, rather, for them was to try to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. And they meant that, simple pleasures. They didn't believe in pursuing, they weren't hedonists the way we think of hedonists today. They weren't out to experience life to the fullest by any stretch. They just wanted to enjoy the simple pleasures of life and to avoid anything that could cause you suffering. Now, the Stoics were on the opposite end. They believed that divinity is real, that there is a God. They didn't think God was knowable personally. They debated this, but most of them didn't believe that. They believed in sort of a pantheistic God. They believed that God was everywhere and in all things. They kind of understood God to be the created order, or all of the natural laws together, or all the laws of physics. I heard one person describe it once as saying, if gravity holds all things together, then they believed that God was the gravity. So they believed that God was present, and that if you wanted to live a good life, then you needed to live a life that was consistent with the sense of order that God had created. So they believed in four virtues. They believed in wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. They believed that a good person would live those four values, and that living those four values would make you a good citizen. That they were very, very much concerned about how people lived in society together. They believed that all people had an obligation to be in service to the people around them, to be a good citizen. So they didn't believe that the secret to happiness was to enjoy life and avoid suffering. They believed that the secret of happiness was to live a virtuous life. And if you lived a virtuous life, then you could live a life of peace. And then along comes Paul, and he says, well, you can guess which one he was closer to. He was closer to the Stoics, and in fact, he quotes Stoics in here. He's actually already read the Stoics, or at least some of them, and he quotes them, and he says, "Well, you guys are right that God is present, but God is knowable in a way that you guys don't understand." And he goes on to make his case. So the thing that interests me about Paul is that Paul really went out of his way to understand the people that he was talking to understand their motives, to understand their beliefs. And he didn't just try to get a cursory understanding of it so that he could, sort of weaponize it in his arguments. I mean, he didn't. So in other words, he hadn't studied the Stoic philosophers just so he could know how to undermine them. He actually incorporated some of the ideas into his sermons, and some of those things found their way into the Gospel of John and into really Christian writings for the next 4 centuries. So when he went into a town to teach people about Jesus, he wanted to truly understand these people that he was talking to. He wanted to know their lives. He wanted to engage them at any level that he could, which is, I think, one of our weaknesses today as a faith is that not just as a faith, not just as the Christian faith, but as a people, we often don't understand at all the motives of other people. We don't understand at all what is going on in their heads, what it is they believe. We think we do, but we often don't. Anyway, so that's one of the possible things I could go into, but I'm nowhere near done. Just the studying that I want to do to digest the scripture before I move forward with it. So that's the scripture for this week. Another thing I wanted to talk about tonight, let me bring it up here. There is a study that I'm going to teach in the fall. Some of you got an email about it already. Every year I teach a Bible study. I think I'm going to be teaching Wednesday nights this year. I'm pretty sure Wendy's class is going to be on Tuesday nights. Wendy's class is going to have a niche. Wendy, are you in here? Wendy's classes, I've never had a class taught at a church like what Wendy is teaching. What Wendy is diving really deep into some very specific questions about how the Christian understanding of the afterlife, the soul, resurrection of the dead, heaven, hell, other ideas like purgatory and limbo, where all of those ideas came from, what the church believed at different periods of time, how we got to where we are today, and ask the question, when we talk about these things, are we really talking about the same things that, Lucy, I got your text. When we say these things, do we mean the same things that they said in the first century? Do we actually believe the same things that Jesus believed, or do we just think we do? And it's going to be a very interesting class. And it's going to be a challenging class because Christians have not always believed what we believe today. It has changed dramatically over time, and we don't all believe the same thing today. And oftentimes people are surprised to find out that they don't necessarily believe the same thing same thing as the person sitting next to them in the pew does. So Wendy's teaching her class, I believe, on Tuesdays. Don't quote me on that. I can look that up real quick because I know she's starting on September 15th, which I think is a Tuesday. Yes, she's teaching her class on Tuesdays. I'm going to teach Disciple 2, I believe, on Wednesday nights. I'm going to be on Zoom. She's going to be on Zoom. But I'm going to teach another class as well that I'm very excited about. I've been looking at it for a while, and I've come to believe that we need to do this. I'll hold up the book for you here. Oh, it's way too bright. You can't see it. You can't see it at all. There you go. Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzaro. and you can find it on Amazon. You can buy either the book or the audio book. It's available in hardback and paperback. It's also available in course kit, which you get the paperback, the workbook, and also a daily devotional. And this is about using the spiritual disciplines in conjunction with emotional self-awareness to help us grow into mature Christians and mature people. To quote a great line from the book, he talks about somebody who was saying, he said, I've been a Christian for 22 years, but I'm not a 22-year-old Christian. I've been a 1-year-old Christian 22 times. And so it's based on the premise that you can't be a mature Christian if you're an immature person. That if your spiritual growth and your emotional growth don't go together, then you're not going to get to where Christ wants you to be. And the reason I want to do this is because all the study that I've done over the past 5 years to get my own emotional health and my own emotional spiritual maturity to be where it needed to be, I learned a lot about the power of emotions like anger and the danger of bottling it up and hiding it, because the Bible says that do not sin in your anger, and that anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. And I believe that, but the solution is not to hide your anger. The solution is to examine your anger and to figure out why it is you're angry, and what it is you're reacting to, and to deal with that anger and process it rather than bottling it up. Well, either unleashing it on somebody or bottling it up until a later date and then unleashing it on some poor innocent bystander like your family when you get home at the end of the day. Because people snap when they're under strain. And the higher level of anxiety people carry around with them, the more likely they are to snap over the course of a day. And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to look around us right now and make the judgment that people are snapping all around us, oftentimes without warning, over things that you would never think people would snap over. And the old expression, the straw that broke the camel's back. A straw doesn't break a camel's back. A straw on top of 100 pounds might break a camel's back, right? So, when you see somebody snap over something, you think, well, why did that one particular thing send them over the edge? Well, once somebody is at the edge, anything can put them over the edge. And right now, everybody is at the edge. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial in saying this. So what then is the solution? The solution is to make us, to invest in building up our strength and our resilience. So to reduce our overall anxiety level. I've kind of failed at doing that because I've tried to do it through preaching. And when you tell somebody to stop being anxious, that doesn't help them be less anxious, does it, folks? In fact, it might make them more anxious. So the other way to do it is to do serious Bible study and serious introspection, and to do that. And that's what this book is about. It's been around for about 10 years now. It's got a good, solid track record of changing people's lives and changing churches' lives. There is a video curriculum that goes with it. It's going to be an 8-week course. I'm thinking I'll probably do it on Sunday nights. I don't know, but I'm seriously considering, and we'll have to talk about this in church leadership. I'm seriously considering basically making this a required class for people who want to be in church leadership positions, because in these, I'm so tired of the phrase, in these unprecedented times, in these challenging times, in these strange times in which we live, a lot has gone wrong this year, and I wish I could say that things are going to get easier in the near future. But I know there's no reason to believe that things are going to continue to be difficult for the foreseeable future. And if we're going to make good decisions and work together as a team, we're going to have to we're all going to have to really work on ourselves and find ways to deal with, the fear of the future that we all have. I read everything everybody posts on Facebook. I read it all. I don't comment on hardly any of it usually. I react sometimes. I'll click a like just so you know that I read it. I want y'all to know that however fearful people are of the future of the country or of the church or of the denomination, I am at least twice as fearful as you are. Okay. So I don't want you to think that I'm not a part of this, but I have worked extremely hard in recent years to find ways to deal with my fears of the future and to find ways to deal with anger so that I don't lash out and hurt people. And I'm not saying that I don't ever lash out and hurt people. I know that I still do. I'm not perfect. We're all on the road to perfection, right? As Wesley would say, we're all trying to do that. But I'm hoping that we can do this together and work together toward having a more pleasant, more civil way of handling controversies in the future. Because we can't have people snap in a church. People will snap at church. There's no way to avoid it, but we need less snapping at church. And as pastor, and many of you in here are also in church leadership positions, we're tasked with maintaining order in the church, whether it's a worship service that has to follow a certain order or a meeting has to follow a certain order or a Bible study. There needs to be, a sense of decorum, a sense of there's a way we talk about things and a way that we don't talk about things. And those of you who have seen me in action for a while now, I think you know that if I'm in a meeting and somebody says something that I think might not be true, I'll generally question it when it's said. If somebody comes to me in some setting and they're, I want to say, angry beyond reason, which doesn't happen too often, but every now and then, I'll have somebody in my office literally shaking. They're so angry, and I'm not going to engage that in the moment. And people don't like that, because when you're angry, you want somebody to deal with you. But I'll tell people, go home, calm down, call me when you're calm. I'm not going to deal with you when you're like this. So those are things that I have practiced all along because I believe that there needs to be a way that we deal with each other in church. Not to suppress emotions, but to say, look, I can see you're angry. Or, if you're, when I'm angry, there have been times when I've said, all right, I'm angry right now. And I'm going to go outside and walk around the parking lot once before we talk about this. I've done that, we need to, I don't want to use the word police. That's not a good way. We need to self-regulate, in other words. Something that I'm going to perhaps start doing in the future. No, I'm going to start doing it in the future. In the past, if somebody spoke to somebody else disrespectfully, whether it was to me or somebody else, generally speaking, I've not responded to it. Like I said, if people are really angry, I'll time out. But people don't always say disrespectful things in anger. Sometimes they're quite calm, and it's quite well thought out before they say them. But in the past, I've just sort of let those things go. And if people did it to each other, I kind of let it go. I'm still sort of divided over whether or not to step in when one person is disrespectful to another, because I'd like to see that person handle it themselves. but they don't always. But in the future, if I see somebody saying something, hear somebody saying something that I think crosses the line into, certainly name calling. If somebody calls somebody a name, or if somebody questions somebody's integrity, I'm going to say timeout. Okay, we're not going to question each other's integrity in this forum here. We're not going to assign labels or names to other people or groups of people. We're not going to be about doing that. And certainly, if I ever do something like that, I would certainly think that anyone who is in this, now I'm looking at the names of the people who I know are here right now. I would hope that any of you would say, "Whoa, Steve, I don't think you really want to say that." And part of it is, once again, civil discourse. Churches need to model civil discourse, but part of it, I was raised to respect authority, and not everybody is. My brother is a middle school teacher, and he has complained to me about times when he's had parents in his room for parent-teacher conferences, and he says, I said to them, I'm having a lot of behavioral problems with your kid. He won't follow directions. He is defiant. He backtalks a lot. And the parents will say, well, yeah, we've taught him to question authority. That makes teaching difficult. I wasn't taught to question authority, at least not in that sense. Was I taught to think critically about authority? Absolutely. Okay. But I was taught to treat authority figures with respect. And I remember back during the George W. Bush administration, I was very disturbed by some of the ways people started talking about the president, addressing the president, or referring to the president, and the president's daughters, I think, were being handled in inappropriate ways in the press and entertainment. And we had a talk, and Zoe was in elementary school. And we said, from here on out, folks, we're going to be very intentional in this house about speaking respectfully about the president, whether we voted for him or not, whether we like him or not. When we're in public, he is our president. When we're at home, if we don't like what he's done, we're going to be polite about how we say it. And we stuck to that during the Obama administration, even when it was hard. And we've stuck with it in the Trump administration, even though it's hard, because I believe that there are ways to do things. And certainly in my own life, I've also tried to model this, whether I was working at the Boy Scouts or whether I was working really anywhere, but certainly since I've been working in the church, I have never questioned one of my superiors publicly. If I had a concern, I would go to them privately. I've never complained about one of my superiors publicly. As Tom Hanks said in Private Ryan, complaints go up the chain of command, not down. If they go down, that demotivates demotivates your force. I've seen people say spectacularly disrespectful things to bishops and to district superintendents. I was at a district meeting once, and we had a new district superintendent, and the new district superintendent said something, and one of the pastors said out loud across the room, when our church leaders say things like that, it makes me wonder if they've ever actually served a church before. Really? That's what you're going to say in public, the first meeting with your new district superintendent? That's not how I was raised. So, yeah, I've always tried to model that. But I've never really tried to police it before. And I remember when I first came to Mount Zion, in my very first sermon, I talked about a lot of different things. I talked about the history of Mount Zion and the future of Mount Zion. But I explained my own theory about pastoring, and I said, I am your pastor on paper, but I understand that I have to earn your respect. Just because I'm here in the pulpit doesn't necessarily mean you're going to respect me. I have to earn that. And afterwards, Mac came up to me, in my office a week later, and he said, Pastor Steve, you're the pastor. You don't have to earn respect. And I said, oh, come on, Mac. Everybody has to earn respect. And he says, no, and here's why. He says, some people just don't respect anybody. And you can't earn respect from those people. And you have to demand respect. He said, at the end of the day, if you don't demand respect, you'll never get it from anybody. You don't earn respect. You demand it from people. And we sort of agreed to disagree, but I thought about it quite a bit. And we had some conversations at home about it afterwards. And it was around that time that I was watching I saw a clip on YouTube from one of those daytime judge shows. It wasn't Judge Judy, but it was a show like that. And there was a plaintiff who was a doctor, and he's used to being addressed a certain way in his professional life, and the judge was not addressing him that way. And he said to the judge, he says, hey, I expect to be spoken to with respect. And she said, well, where I come from, you have to earn respect. And without missing a beat, he said, where I come from, you're born with respect. And I thought about that. Like, are they both right? Are they both wrong? And what I've come to realize is respect means two different things. Respect, on the one hand, is something that you feel towards someone, but it's also a way you treat a person. And even if you respect nobody, you're still obligated to treat people respectfully. I hope that's making sense. So on the one hand, yes, you have to do your absolute best to earn respect from people. But if you have not earned respect from people, that does not give those people a pass to be disrespectful toward you. Because as Christians, we are to treat everybody with respect. I hope you guys know me well enough to know that when we're in a church council meeting or something, you can disagree with me, you can argue with me, you can question my wisdom on something, you can question my facts on something. You can vote against me and urge other people to vote against me as well, and that is all fair game. But going forward, if you question my integrity or my veracity, I'm going to say you're out of line, because I believe we need to start setting a better example to the world around us. So that's all I have to say about that. We do not have a lot of comments here tonight. Do we have a lot of people in here tonight? We got 13. So we have one prayer request, and that is from the Princess. And we are asking for prayers for Eddie's sister, Gladys, who is very ill and has chosen to be home under hospice care. I'm very sorry to hear that. Wish her all of the best. And, being in hospice during the pandemic is a lot more isolating than it has been in the past. So we'll certainly keep that family in our prayers. You may remember Leslie McGuire also asking us to pray for her cousin, I believe it was, who was not feeling well and was didn't get a doctor's appointment because you couldn't for a while, but as soon as she did go in and get her scans done, just riddled through with cancer and really no options on the table at this point. So pray for them as well. Let's see, who did I talk to today? I talked to Tim Bowling quite a bit today. Good conversation. Cindy is quite sick. So please keep them in your prayers. The good news is Tim's got family coming over quite a bit now, and they're helping him get around. And they seem to have Cindy's pain managed a lot better than they had at one point. So I think Cindy's at least feeling better. She's sleeping a lot. She's getting some calories into her. Do we have any other prayer requests, folks? It is 8:35 now. I want to wrap this up as quickly as we can. Any more prayer requests? I don't have any text messages. Let me see if I have any email. I've got a couple of emails sitting in my box here and nothing relating to prayer requests. So we're going to have our, I'm going to hold off on saying that because I'm not sure how it's going to work out yet. I haven't looked at the weather forecast for Sunday yet. I don't know what the weather forecast is. I don't know if it's going to be hot. I don't know if it's going to be rainy. I don't know if we're going to want to be inside or not. I know that we have some people who are anxious for us to go back inside because they say they will start worshiping with us again when we go back inside. I know other people with compromised immune system who are saying they will stop worshiping with us once we go back inside. And there's not much we can do about that. Hi to whoever you are who just said, hi, Pastor Steve. All I see is Facebook user. Sorry. Once again, if you're watching us on the main church page, your name will show up for me. If you're watching on the in the group, your name will not show up for me. So hello everybody. We've got Chad, we've got Carolyn, we've got the Princes, we've got Dick and Nardine, we've got John and Gail, and whoever just said hi. Oh, and Carolyn Livingston. Hello, Carolyn. Carolyn, just to let you know, I had a, oh, Leslie's here. Hi, thanks, Pastor Steve. You're doing so much to keep us connected. I'm trying. Oh, and Kayleen's here as well. Carolyn, if you're still on here, I saw Andy Garland hardly ever, Andy's an old friend of ours. Andy hardly ever posts anything on Facebook, but he pulled his Chrysler out of the garage and fired it up this week. He loves to collect old Chryslers, and I think this is a it was one of the big monsters from the early '80s, named after a Spanish city, not the Cordoba. One of the other ones. He's got a big old beast that he pulled out and fired up. It was fun listening to him pump the gas pedal, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump, and then you crank it. I haven't heard a car do. I haven't heard somebody pump a gas pedal, and good Lord, I don't 20 years maybe since I heard somebody pump a gas pedal like that. You forget little sounds like that, and then you hear a sound and it sends you way back to the good old days. Of course, they weren't the good old days because why? Oh, I didn't see him in person. I just saw him on Facebook. I made a comment though. They weren't the good old days because if they were good days, we wouldn't have had to pump the gas pedal 20 times to get the car started, only to end up flooding the carburetor. Oh well. All right. So, do we have any other prayer requests? I guess that's it for the evening. All right, folks. The pandemic is getting worse, so please take care of yourselves. Please use the hand sanitizer. We've got all the sign-up sheets at the church now. Please be careful at church. I love you guys, and I want to keep you guys healthy, and I want to keep us all in community together. So, what does Ellen say? Be kind to each other. And she's been all over the news this week. Be kind to each other, folks, and look out for each other and help each other out any way you can. And if there's anything I can do for anybody, I haven't put this out there in a while. Please give me a call if you're tired or you're lonely or you're down and you need to talk. Or if you're bothered by something, just pick up the phone and give me a call. Because I did not go into this line of work to sit in front of a webcam. I did not go into I'm a people person, and if I'm sitting here wrestling with a computer or reading a book and I get a call from you, that's just about the best interruption that I could have in a day. So by all means, give me a holler if you need to talk about anything. All right, let's go ahead and finish up with a word of prayer. And of course, we'll use the Serenity Prayer, which was influenced by the Stoics that Paul was talking to in Athens. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happier in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. All right, thank you guys. I went 10 minutes over. I apologize. I hope I made it worth your while. Good evening and God bless.